GI Combat number 7, written by Peter Tomasi, art by Howard Chaykin. So last issue, the Stuarts went with the haunted tank into the Arctic and they ran across a Nazi war wheel. I'm not explaining it more than that. So we get a little flash sideways here of the man who's running the whole thing, and it turns out to be the grandson of Rommel, who I guess had an assassination attempt against Hitler, and he's been hearing Rommel call and say like, oh, you need to build a war wheel, because why not? Because I guess they were building war wheels back in the day, but this is a bigger one, stronger, with more guns. So he's called the Winter Fox, and he is the one pilot, or not piloting, but running this war wheel. He's the minds behind it. So it's firing on the haunted tank. The Stuarts are firing back at it, and they're like, we can't get through this thing. It's too thick. The only way we're going to be able to get it is if we get inside. And so the younger Stuart is like, all right, I'm going to get up there. You cover me, and for the love of God, don't let the ghost do the aiming. So he jumps out of the tank. He makes his way over to the wheel, grabs onto the side of it as it's spinning upwards, and as he's doing so, he's trying to find a entry hatch. All the guns start re-aiming towards him, and we see the older Stuart he shoots out the guns, and he's like, oh, you got it. No, you get in there, sonny boy. So he finds a hatch, he gets it open, and he jumps inside. But as he does so, the wheel stops rolling and starts flying, like flying saucer-wise. And Jeb's in the tank like, oh, those Krauts think of everything. So he's like, all right, General. He pulls out his sword. He's in the tank. He's like, we got one more fight in us. We got to get in there and save my boy. And the tank teleports out and then teleports back on top of the war wheel. So inside the war wheel, I blank on his name, but the younger Stuart makes his way through, and he comes across a man who's hooked up Matrix style into the war wheel. And he's like, what in the heck? And then he gets shot in the shoulder. Rommel comes out, the grandson of Rommel, and he's like, ah, yes. And he's speaking in German this whole time, so literally, like, the younger Stuart's unable to understand any of this, but the reader gets it, and he turns out this guy, hooked up Matrix style, is the original Rommel. And he is just basically a mind slave here to pilot the war wheel. And so the younger Stuart's down, and Jeb steps up. He shows up in the tank. He uses a saber to cut off the younger Rommel's arm. And he's like, I sure hope that was his side heel hand. And, sorry, his name's Scott. And so Scott and Jeb get back up, and they're like, all right, well, I fought against this guy in the war before, and as I always told your grandmother, I hate reunions. So he takes a saber, stabs it through the older Rommel, and immediately the younger one has his gun out and shoots Jeb. So Scott picks up the sword, uses it to stab the younger Rommel, and now both the Rommels and Jeb are dying. And Scott runs over to Jeb and is just like, hey, could you do me a favor and not let me die in this hunk of junk? And he's like, oh, hang on, Grandpa. And he gets him out of the war wheel, back up to the tank, sets him in there. And Jeb's like, what's your name, boy? And he's like, I'm a Stuart, Grandpa. I always have been. And so Jeb passes away, and he calls out to the ghosts of his men that he fought with back in World War II. And he's like, hey, guys, I'll be with you soon. And as the war wheel starts crashing down to Earth, the tank teleports out. So we cut back over to Jeb's house, and the boy who was trying to get his baseball all the way in the first issue, he's finally got it, and at that moment the tank teleports in and crashes into the roof of Jeb's house as Jeb has been shown to pass away. So some time passes, he's buried in Arlington. Scott's getting an American flag for his grandfather's service, and Steve Trevor comes up, and he's like, hey, so I know the Army asked you some questions. They're satisfied with your story, but Argus most certainly isn't. So I brought you a souvenir, and he brings the saber that was lodged into Rommel's chest, and he's like, "This belongs to your family. You should have it." And he's like, "Oh, thank you, Trevor. And trust me, I know nothing happened down there, and I won't be sharing a word of it." And he's like, "Cool, great." I mean, we genuinely don't know where the haunted tank is, and it seems like only a steward's able to control it anyway, so if we ever need you, we hope that you'll be on call. And he's like, "Well, I don't know where it is anyway. It's not like I can hear it calling to me literally every moment of every day." And Steve's like, "Right, yeah, okay, anyway, bye." And we see that Scott is still able to talk to Jeb, like mentally, the same way that Jeb was able to talk to the general. And the haunted tank is back in the weird, like, Hall of Mysteries thing that it originally was in. The end. I think it was a satisfying conclusion. I think it was fine. It had a little tone of family to it. It did a whole thing of how absolutely batshit insane the concept of the haunted tank and the war wheels are, but it made it fun. It made it interesting. I think that the whole story of Haunted Tank, while brief, was solidly told. So I have really no qualms with it. I'll give it like a 7. And I mean, that 7's kind of representing the entirety of the Haunted Tank arc here from the last, like, what, 3-4 issues. But it's still good. It's still, with just this one issue, is still fine within its own right. Art-wise, I followed it the whole way through. Looked great. I mean, yeah, it's not blowing my hair back. It's not an incredible story. It's not the defining Haunted Tank story. It's just a fun little romp, and I really think that this was the right place to put it. It's just a backup story to a otherwise probably uneventful comic. So, 7.